Now, I'd love to introduce our next conversation, occupying space and building queer futures for the next generation. Rich Richards is a transmasculine Jamaican who continues to occupy spaces that are deemed unreachable by trans bodies. A mobilizer, graphic artist, political consultant, and an advocate for marginalized people, his visibility is the tool used to access spaces outside of the normal queer environments. Having held leadership conversations around queer acceptance and value towards movements such as political numbers, he uses the written word and graphics to share his journey and catalog the experiences of himself and people like him who live at the intersection of Blackness, transness, and ghetto identity in order to claim space and purpose new queer futures that are more inclusive. So thank you so much for joining us. And in conversation with Rich, we have Dr. Tamara Beckford, who is a wife, mother, and board certified emergency physician with over a decade of experience working in emergency rooms across the country. Most recently, she has been on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic in her community. And I just want to say thank you so much for being here, both of you, for starting off day 2 of the summit. Please take it away.
Thank you for having me. Well, welcome, everyone. I'm Dr. Tamara Beckford, as you heard, and I have this wonderful opportunity of interviewing Rich Richards. Now, you heard a little bit about Rich Richards, but I want to bring Rich on, and I want you to just give us a little bit about yourself. Rich, just introduce yourself a little bit more before we go deep into this conversation. So let's unmute ourselves, Rich.
Hi, good morning, Power to Fly. I'm Rich Richards. I'm a transmasculine Jamaican. I am a lover of people, a lover of community. I function in multiple intersections, and I use that as my privilege to access spaces that are not reachable by other LGBTQIA plus people. And I've just been here doing work in the spaces and trying to see how best I can help the Jamaican community to advance.
Wow. I am super excited to talk to you today. You know, we're going to be talking about, like we said, occupying spaces. We're going to be talking about building queer futures for the next generation. Now, our first question is, you know, you've described yourself as someone who has been in spaces that's been deemed unreachable by someone in your intersecting identity. Now, tell us a little bit more about the spaces and your experiences in those spaces.
Okay, no problem, Doc. I think we're inclined to see our intersectionalities or disabilities and or identities as limitations, hindrances, instead of what they are, superpowers. I live at multiple introspecting intersections. I am Black, autistic, dyslexic, I'm transmasculine, Jamaican, and Jamaica is predominantly homophobic and transphobic. In lower income communities riddled by violence, I've sustained community prominence as an openly transmasculine Jamaican. And in one of the roughest garrisons in Kingston, spaces we are taught that are forbidden to LGBTQ people. And at the center of my presence is ghetto identity and my privilege of being able to access volatile spaces free from harm. And I think it's a gift from my father, the security in the street, even though he was not very accepting of who I am, his presence garnered me space to proceed without being hurt. And I've used my privilege to advance conversation for other trans people and has also kept other persons' space. And this privilege allowed me to access dons and strongmen to advance the conversation around safety and solidifying the statement. Queer people are not a threat. These conversations has kept so many light going for queer people who would have not otherwise realized. And here for generations in Jamaica, queer mobility for feminine bodies has been sex work or fashion. And for masculine queer folks, it's been security jobs or call center. it's like they've exiled us from access to mainstream employment as if we are incapable of excellence. And for me personally, job hunting was a bit of a drag, sending in multiple resumes and not expecting much. And you get a lot of calls, a lot of response to your email, and they're excited to have you until they meet you, of course. And when you show up, it's like, I remember showing up to a job and it was like saying it's a closed interview. What am I doing here? They're expecting Rich Richards, and how I was presenting wasn't what they were expecting. And I know that for a lot of LGBT folks, it's always been like that. We've showed up for jobs and been denied these jobs because of how we present or because of how we identify. And you hear the excitement in their voices over the phone, and you walk in and you're ready and we'll call you. Or I right out had some people shown up for job interview and had some people tell me that they're Christians and they don't associate with these kind of things, and it's heartbreaking.
Understandable.
But
yeah.
Well,
I have a quick question. So we've discussed, you're saying that you've had opportunities where you've been denied, because of the way you show up and the way they see you, over the phone. It's accepting, you sound like a great candidate. And then when you get there, the story changes. Now, how do you think that we can begin this conversation towards the queer acceptance? Like, where do you think it's a great way for us to begin this?
All right. My way of beginning the conversation was to access political spaces. I was a former political candidate. I was removed when I came out openly trans. I launched a bid in 2019 on the front of one of the nation's most renowned paper. It read Transgender Candidate 2021. And for me, that was maybe one of the roughest instances because I was in the political space for 15 years as a youth politician, and you were capable, and they admired your work, and they identified your effort as being irreplaceable. But when it was time for me to launch my candidacy, it was as if it wasn't a part of it. And they tell you that you're not ready, yet they're calling you in to campaign for other candidates, to structure other candidates. And I believe that that was my place to take up space to advance the conversation. Because in Jamaica, the conversation is easier to begin in upper class. When we have the conversations in upper class here in Jamaica, they're more receptive. And funny enough, the lower class in Jamaica is trying to model upper class.
So you start
what I've done
with
is
the upper class, and then you'll be able to now, based on the lower class trying to model the upper class, once you've gotten the acceptance or been able to get into the mindset and understanding, then you feel like the conversation becomes easier with the lower class. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yes. And I think visibility has been an amazing tool here because for so many people, they are afraid of what they don't know, of what they don't understand.
Absolutely.
And they've always thought that, like, LGBT folks here, they thought it was a myth per se, and there weren't a lot of people here. So with visibility, where we're seeing so many queer Jamaican take up space, it has brought the conversation home. And sharing lived experiences with them has also made it easier. When you can signify with a phase in a person's life or see how their journey has impacted you, it's refreshing. And And I think a lot of time here, for me personally, I've used my entire life to strategically place myself in spaces that can advance the conversation. And I remember last year, my son is also mildly autistic. And last year I was trying to get him into a new school that was more understanding of where he was. And I called around and I thought I'd amazing prep school for him. And we were in dialogue, and there were some documents that I needed, and they were assisting me to get the documents, and they were telling me where to go, and they called and they checked up on me, and they said, "When are you coming, Rich?" And they were interested. And my son and I went to the school, and the moment we opened the door, there was a person actually coming at us from the office, and we stopped at the security post. And when we stopped at the security post and we were talking to the security, he was like, "What are you doing here?" And I'm giving him the documents, and he's like, "We don't have any space." And I told him who I was, and he was shocked. And he said he didn't have any space. This is the same person that I've been communicating with the principal for weeks. And I think it's a case of they fear that you will indoctrinate them. And I think that's pretty weird. That's the first place that you go to. We'll indoctrinate you, or it's something that we can instill, or it's something that we can pass on. And I think that's the challenge. The lack of understanding is what is hindering queer youth.
That's a good point that you're making about the lack of understanding that is happening now, especially, you are an adult, and, some of the things that you are advocating for is not just for the queer present, but also for the queer future, right? For those who are younger, who are coming up, in order to really help them. So your work has really been focused on not just the now, but for the generations to come. So tell us, why do you really think that it's so important for us to be able to conceptualize all this work that you're doing, and especially the exposure, the understanding? Why is it so important for us to conceptualize that as an ongoing thing for our queer future and not just for the present?
To be honest, Dr. Beckford, the queer present has already happened. They acknowledge our presence. What we do in the present tense determines the future's intent. So though we're here in this moment and we've risen above the obstacles, we've risen above the trauma, there is a kind of understanding that comes from those battle scars. So I think what we can do is create a path that the next generation won't have to suffer the same fate that we have, because we have suffered. So many of us have hidden it under our belts and chosen to move on. So conceptualizing a world where youths, mine or somebody else's, if I can teach my child to make another child's life a little easier, if I can impact another child's life in a way that, there's this way where queer people signify with trauma. And it's always stories of hurt, and it's mostly stories of pain. And it's like, that's what they're using to identify us. And I'd like to change that.
Oh, tell us.
I know that it won't always be easy, but that's the thing that I'd like to change more than anything else. And when we're in rooms and we're speaking to each other, the thing that shows up as a common interest is our hurt or pain, loss of family acceptance, not dropping out of school too early, homelessness, having skills and not being employed, being able to afford rent, but not finding a landlord who will rent you a place. And these are the things that we have to contend with. And though age or maturity or experiences have garnered us enough grit to just accept it as what it is, I'd like to hope that the next generation has a far better journey than the one that I have. I may not be able to change it for myself in my lifetime. So I know I'd like to impact the next generation, not just for me, but so they can have a better future, a better reality, better opportunities where
Wow.
they're able to dream.
Absolutely. So now you've told us about, like not being able to get even homes, even when you're able to, or dwelling, when you're even able to afford it, not being able to, like we said, even jobs. Have you had any of these additional experiences that you would like to share with others, especially with the youth, to let them know, like, hey, we're out here fighting for you, fighting so that you don't have to go through this? Any of these experiences that they might be able to identify with?
To be honest, Dr. Beckford, I've been blessed in a way to not have to experience homelessness. And for me, what I've done, as I live in a low income community that violence pops up in a lot, where they're told that they're to hate LGBT people. And I access that space. What I've done over the years is I've invited other queer people home as a way of offering them safe haven while they get themselves together.
Right.
And they were safe when they got there, out of respect for me. And I can bring my friends into the room because I know their experiences may have not been as good as mine. Though my mother may not use my pronouns, she's very accepting. She loves my partner. She knows her. She is involved. She knows who I am, but is not at a place where she's respectful of the pronouns. Or I'd rather say she can't bother with that part. But she she was great because she bought the clothes. And I've never been in a spot where I've had to wear something that was uncomfortable for me. But there are experiences here that aren't good as mine.
Right.
The rent clause here has, there's a part of the rent clause here that says a landlord can evict you if you are immoral, which is rather weird. So queer people can be evicted on the grounds that they're queer. You can afford rent, but you may not find somebody who is willing to rent you. And I lost a friend in 2019, Chanel Fashion, who was coming. She's a trans woman, Jamaican trans woman, who was going home from an event. They got the wrong person because she looked like another trans woman. Not saying that it's right to try to hurt the person they were trying to hurt to, but she lost her life because of mistaken identity. And there are a lot of women like Chanel who's had to live out on the street or in the gullies here. It's it's baffling to say the least. You are judged based on your identity, not on merits, not on your capability. And there's this desire by heterosexual or heteronormative principle that it's a fight. That is us against them, and there's this gay agenda. So it's as if they've barricaded the doors shut and they're keeping us out against our will. So the room to excel is really minimal. And I think here in Jamaica, like I work at Jamaica Aid Support for Life currently, it's an NGO. And I think they are the only only NGO who offers HRT. which has been a lifesaver for so many trans people.
Right.
Because it's to have youth. I wasn't able to access care until I'm like 30. So to know that the next generation is able to come here, get some blood work free of cost, see a doctor free of cost, see therapists free of cost. So I think in little ways, there are so many things that we've done that isn't geared at who is actually doing it now, but who will come next.
Oh, this is wonderful. So
Or
now this
some,
kind of leads me to my next question, which is a good one. So we've discussed, and you've discussed a lot of the different areas. Now, which one do you think is one of the areas that we need to focus on, especially to create more opportunities for the queer youths? So
that one is tough.
I know.
That one is tough. I think sensitization.
Okay.
I know that so many times we try to sensitize workplace, sensitize healthcare, but I think there is some sensitization of the youths themselves that needs to happen. There's a lot of conversation in Jamaica around living your truth. And there are organizations that will tell you to live your truth and they will leave you on your own to live your truth. But they've not said to you, if you come out openly, this may happen or that may happen, or it may be hard for you to access a job, or it may be. So I think there needs to be sensitization for youths, not just leaving them on their own with
A little
phrases
bit
that
more
have
support
so
afterwards.
of us. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that's the first thing that needs to happen. I think there needs to be special attention placed on mental health, normalizing care. I know that a lot of time Black folks are wary of
Therapists,
going to the therapist.
psychiatrists, counseling.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think some of the other areas are social justice, security. I think family life is a big one because I think the joys of family has been denied so many LGBT youth, and it affects them into adulthood. And a part of having a wholesome life is community. And the first community engagement for humans is our family. I know a lot of us run into queer families, but before we get there, there's a lot of space. I think health is an area for queer youth, and I think LGBT folks are disproportionately affected by chronic conditions and experiences at higher prevalence rates of HIV or AIDS and substance abuse, things like that. So I think that's very important. Education and training.
Okay.
And I think because it's so easy for people to leave us out of minimum wage jobs or lesser jobs, I think it's really important for us to have an education and get involved in training, owning our crafts or entrepreneurial skills to get out there. I know that Power to Fly is amazing and they're doing amazing work. There are organizations like TransTech that has been great for folks like me. And I think youth in itself, youth is an area, youth employment, ensuring that youths are represented on all national youth development entities. I think that's really important to have LGBT folks in those places, being a part of what's happening for them, not just leaving them out of the conversation, but including them.
Makes sense.
Because so many times make decisions for queer people because they are marginalized and we sit in high places and we make preparations for them. But I think we need to include them in the conversation. I think housing and social security is important. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I have
Housing.
one last question too. And I think you're gonna
Okay.
love this because it goes into the imagination, and you get to really use your imagination to let us know how you envision the new queer future. So tell me, how would you envision a new queer future? If you had your way, Rich, and you're able to do this your way, let us know.
Whoa.
I know it's loaded.
I think
right?
that's the question of the decade.
Absolutely. So we have a couple minutes. Let's see how we can answer this.
All right. Okay. Oh, a new queer future. I would envision hope, inclusivity, diversity, tolerance, acceptance, massive success, advancement towards human decency, a world filled with opportunities not specific to gender or class, the possibility for dreams to be realized, where the word human replaces acronyms used to exile us. Families chosen and biological exist peacefully. A new queer future can be possible when we reintegrate change holistically. And I think to just see queer youth thriving under support, optimism, and love is the queer future that I hope will happen.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thriving under optimism and love. I mean, who would not want that for the future? You know, Rich, you've really taken this opportunity to highlight some of the struggles that you have gone through, some of the struggles that you've seen others gone through. You've been able to really get into picturing, painting this wonderful picture for those of us who are not understanding what someone who has decided, that this is my life and I am going to live it. And some of the struggles that occur, such as the financial struggles, housing, opportunities for job and employment. You've really painted that picture. And, we're very honored to have you, Rich, really on the foreground here, supporting the youth and letting them know that, there is a future here where you are here supporting, even bringing youth and families into your home and giving the love that you have, because your love is obviously very, very abundant and it's very prevalent, and you can see the love that and the passion that you have in helping others. So with you around, I definitely know that that abundance of love that you have is there, and all that you have described as the future, I know that you'll make it not just the future, but the reality. Thank you for taking this time and being here with us on The Power to Fly. Now, before we finish, do you have any last words for us?
Last words.
Yes.
I'd encourage everybody to garner the power to fly. There is so much of us that we've hidden behind bars. We are fabulous people. We are beautiful and amazing. And I think it's time the world got to know us. And if we included all of ourselves in the things that we do, we would paint some very beautiful picture.
Wonderful, wonderful. So there are lots of beautiful pictures to be painted from all the inclusivity. And thank you so much, Rich Richards. I'm Dr. Tamara Beckford with The Power to Fly. We have a Diversity Reboot 2022. Thank you so much for having me.